Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Prabhuji is muted, I think so. Hare Krishna.
1 second. Is it okay now?
Yes, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, welcome you all to this today morning Bhagavad Gita class. We are today discussing from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 16, text 23 and text 24. I'll read the sloka and translation, but the purport is very long, might take a lot of time. So I'll go through the important points. Text 23. Yash Shastra Vidim Utsrijya Vartate Kamakaratah Nasa Siddhim Avapnoti Nasukam Na Param Gatim. He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. Text number 24. Tasma Chastram Pramanam Te Karya Karya Vyavastithau Jnatva Shastra Vidanoktam Karma Kartum Iharhasi. Translation Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. One should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulation of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. Om Gyantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Vena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare Moham Karodi Vachalam Pangam Nandi Vedam Hekapatam Maham Mandesh Sri Guram Dhanadaranam Paramandamadam Shri Chaitanya Vishram. Hare Krishna. So in this last two verses in the chapter entitled The Divine and the Demoniac Nature, Lord Krishna is summarizing the chapter into these two verses. We'll go through the one by one. In text number 23, he says, he who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So, just like when you go and buy a product, you get a user manual, and the user manual says how to operate the product, what to do and what not to do, etc. So similarly, when we come to this material world and take birth, the Shastras are like the user manuals for us. They are the law books for mankind. And one is bound to follow the scriptural injunctions, by which only one can attain perfection of life. So 3 points that I mentioned here. One is, if one acts according to his own whims and fancies, he attains neither happiness. Every human being looks for happiness, to attain happiness. Nor he attains perfection, nor the supreme destination. Supreme destination is go back to Godhead. So one cannot act based on his own whims and fancies. It is said that Shastras clearly say, and it is very true, that human life is given for us to attain the goal of life. And it is only in the human form of life one can understand the value of life. If one goes and talks to other species of life, like animals or birds, they will not understand the value of life. But in the human form of life, it is possible to understand the value of human form of life, and also to understand these law books, which are called scriptures, or also Shastras. And Bhagavad Gita is one such scripture. It is a song of God, and it is given by God himself for betterment of mankind. So we are bound to follow that. In fact, there was an article some time back where it was said that ants. Ant is a very insignificant insect, but it was said that ants are much more capable of joining together to attain a group task perfectly, and which humans cannot attain, which we see. Supposing if there are 4 or 5 human beings trying to do a group task, there are always differences of opinion. But if you see an ant, they go on a line, they will go strictly on that line, they will not deviate. So this is how sometimes human beings deviate from basic fundamentals. Some examples are like marriage. Marriage is recommended within the Shastras between a man and a woman, but there is a tendency nowadays to deviate that also and have a marriage between a man to man or a woman to woman, etc. These are not permitted in the Shastras. Sometimes, so if we see that, we see how far we have deviated from the scriptures, and we have degraded even into the lower, our way of living has gone to those which even the lower species may not have. So that is why it is said that unless and until one follows the Shastras, one will degrade themselves. Now, certain rules and regulations are given for certain type of castes and ashramas in the Varnashrama system, but certain laws are very, very common for all, and one is bound by that. For example, in the ashramas, a brahmachari is supposed to be celibate, whereas in a grihastha ashrama, one is allowed to have a family under some limited sense gratification for the purpose of creating progeny. And similarly, sannyasis are not supposed to indulge in sex. And like that, even for the varnas, there are stipulations like uh, every ashram should have. So one is bound by all these, which are also specific for certain varnas and ashramas, and which are very, very common. Common things may be like irrespective of varnas or ashramas, one should never cheat, and things like that. One should, and there are laws for all these things. If you ask somebody who is staying in Gulf, I was there also for some time. Uh, some places in Gulf, they observe these regulations very strictly, even within their law books. Like if somebody is stealing, there are some states which chop off the hands of the one who steals. So we may not find violation of laws in such countries in such a rampant way like we see here, because people know that if they steal, their hands may be cut off. But these are the ones by which the one becomes absolved. When one is punished, one becomes absolved of all these uh, sinful activities or offenses that they commit. But then, if one knows and goes by the scriptural laws, then one may avoid doing that. So we'll go to some of the finer details where it is mentioned that generally these violation of laws, scriptural injunctions happen due to 3 things, that is lust, greed, and desire. We all have a desire to uh, sense gratify ourselves, which is what is called lust. And when lust is not satisfied, leads to anger, and when lust is satisfied, it leads to greed. And the desires are always flowing in our minds, which leads us to commit these activities. That's why one has to understand the implications of these activities. And then there's Srila Prabhupada further mentions in the purport. Sometimes a man may know theoretically all these things, that these have to be applied. But still, if he does not apply in his own life, then he is to be known as the lowest of mankind, and he degrades himself. So in the human form of life, somebody behaves like animalistic, like an animal, then in the next life he becomes an animal itself. So that is why it is said that human form of life is given so that one is given an intelligence by which one can use his intelligence and follow the regulations for elevating this human form of life to the highest platform. But if he does not follow, then he degrades himself. Then there is a mention that even if he follows the rules and regulations and moral principles, but ultimately does not come to the stage of understanding the Supreme Lord, then that his knowledge has become a waste, which is true. The Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Vedescha sarve ahmeva vedyo vedanta kripeda vedeva chaham. That means he says that the purpose of knowing the Vedas is to know me. That means Krishna and understand Krishna. So if after studying the Vedas, one is not able to come to the platform of understanding who is God, what is the purpose of life, then that knowledge is also a waste. Then there is a mention, Srila Prabhupada further mentioned, that if one accepts the existence of God, but if he does not engage in the service of the Lord, his attempts are spoiled, which is true. So one, you must know the knowledge, then you must apply the knowledge. After applying the knowledge, then one must come to the ultimate realization that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And even after understanding all these things, if one does not engage in the service of the Lord, then all his attempts are spoiled. Because our constitutional position is such that we, being part and parcel of the Lord, are supposed to engage everything in the service of the Lord. So if after knowing the Shastras, understanding and applying and all those things, if the goal is not achieved, then that means all our attempts are spoiled. So there is a quote in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu where it says, Sriti Smriti Purana Adi Pancharatrikam Vidinvina Aikantika Hare Bhakti Utpataya Eva Kalpate. The translation says, devotional service to the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic scriptures, literatures like Upanishads, Puranas, Narada Pancharatra, etc., is simply an unnecessary disturbance in the society. So, our ultimate purpose of life is to perform devotional service. And if this devotional service is not performed based on authorized Vedic literatures like Upanishads or Puranas, etc., it's simply a disturbance in the society, which we see today. So many people call themselves to be ritualistic, but then they do so many nonsense things. For some time back, I went to attend a religious function, and one particular sect of the Brahmanas, they used to claim themselves as uh, uh, authorized Brahmanas born in Brahmin family. But then during the function, some of them even came out and started smoking and all. So this is sort of an example to show that uh, this is a disturbance in the society because they don't have reference to the authorized scriptures. That's why Krishna in this verse says that one who discards scriptural injunctions and acts once according to his whims, yet does not attain perfection of life. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada concludes that the best way is to take to the process of Krishna consciousness, by which one can attain all of these. And one who knowingly violates this rule, he acts in lust, and which is forbidden. This is what is called acting whimsically. Uh, if one knows that this is to be done and this is not to be done, so if one does not go by those stipulation, then one is condemned by the Supreme Lord himself, and they cannot attain perfection and they degrade. Whereas the human form of life is meant for following these stipulations and attain a higher platform. We go to text number 24. Here, the Lord is concluding by saying that one should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. So, first we come to the point that of knowing the Shastras and then applying it, for which we should know what is our duty and what is not our duty. And then when we do perform our duty accordingly, then we become elevated. So the meaning of duty again varies from person to person, and the definitions are given in the Shastras: karma, akarma, vikarma, etc. Karma is what one is supposed to do, uh, and akarma is one which is not favorable in the Shastras, and vikarma is against the injunctions of the Shastras. So these are details are given in Bhagavad Gita also in so many places. So one has to understand, Bhagavad Gita is one of these Shastras. Srimad Bhagavatam is also one of the Shastras. So we must understand Bhagavad Gita and then further go to read Srimad Bhagavatam and so forth. By reading these Shastras, we get to know what is our duty and what is not. For example, Brahmanas have certain duties, yajan, yajan, padan, padan, dhanam, pratigraha, dana, pratignaha. Similarly, Kshatriyas have their duties, Vaishyas have their duties. So one can understand by only going through the scriptures, not by speculative knowledge. And if one does not go through these, then one does not know what is right and what is wrong. So one might proclaim himself to be born in a Brahmana family, but then if he is not engaged in yajan yajan, one he does not perform yajna, he does not facilitate performance of yajna, and similarly supposed to read knowledge and give knowledge. So if one does not do all these things, then he cannot be called a Brahmana, even if he is born in a Brahmana family. So these are the duties that is given for various varnas and various ashramas. Now also it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita that the purpose of all these regulations of the Vedas are meant for knowing Krishna. So if one understands Krishna from Bhagavad Gita and becomes situated in Krishna consciousness, that is perfection. That is the highest perfection of knowledge offered by the Vedic literature. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in fact appeared 500 years before to give this process for perfection in the easy way that is applicable and easily, it can be easily followed by anyone, irrespective of the varna or ashrama. That is, he gave the process, just he said simply chant the name Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and engage in devotion service and eat the remnants of the foodstuff that is offered to the deity. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that if you follow these three, that is enough for you to advance in Krishna consciousness and attain perfection of life. So one who is following these principles and performing devotional service based on the scriptures is understood to have studied all the Vedic literatures. He has come to the conclusion perfectly. But for an ordinary person, it is not possible to engage in devotional service because he doesn't know what is to be done and what is not to be done. So one should act without argument based on the principles of the Shastras and scriptures. Now, we are subject to the four imperfections in life, whereas the Shastras or scriptures are given by the Lord or the incarnations of Lord to us, which are free from these four imperfections. Bhagavad Gita is also a Shastra. It's a communication from God to mankind. So it's like an instruction manual, how to live, just like a product manual gives how to use the product. So if we buy a mobile today, it gives so many implications like don't do this, don't do this. Generally, that might be common for all mobile to how to switch on and switch off. But there may be other features which also vary from mobile to mobile. So similarly, in mankind also, there are stipulations and everyone is bound to follow these stipulations. Now, the Lord is the creator of this material world. And we have also taken birth in this material world for a purpose to attain the human form of life. So when we come here, the Lord knows the purpose and He is the creator and He knows what is good for us. That is why He gives us these instruction manuals like the scriptures so that we read and understand these scriptures and abide by these stipulations given in these manuals. So Shastras are basically given by Lord, who is free from the four defects that are we see in the human form of life. And they don't have these four defects. So Shastras are perfect. The Lord who has given these knowledge through the Shastras is also perfect. So they are free from these four defects. The four defects that are mentioned in a conditioned life are accepted by authorized acharyas in our this thing. One is imperfect senses. We have imperfect senses. We have limitations in our senses. They are, for example, we see our vision of our vision is limited to a certain extent. We can't see an object beyond a certain distance, maybe a few meters or a few hundred meters, etc. But on the other hand, we see an eagle. It is said that any eagle can spot its prey even miles far apart, miles away, and their vision is much more better than what a human being has got. So we can't say that our senses are perfect, and we can't say that the eagle's vision is the perfect. Any conditioned person in this material world have got their own limitations. Similarly, if you take the sense of smell, uh, we may not have this. The sense of smell varies from a person to person. So imperfect senses are one uh, in this material world, and then there is a mention imperfect senses. Uh, then we are likely to commit mistakes. Uh, as we see every day, we perform so many activities. We can't do any activity. Sometimes we may do it perfectly. Sometimes uh, we may make mistakes also. This is one of the things in the conditioned life. One is that we are likely to be cheated, and we are also likely to cheat. We see many times we may go and buy something, and then when we come back home, we might realize that might have been cheated by the shopkeeper or so forth. And the last one is easily illusion. Uh, we all know, we don't know what is the reality. If we look at the first point of reality, first and the foremost, we are not able to understand, even after reading the scriptures, that there is something called a soul within our body. So we are not able to visualize what is the reality. We are not able to understand what is reality, and we are not able to apply also. So these are four imperfections uh, uh, in conditioned life: the easily illusion, likely to commit mistakes, likely to be cheated, and imperfect senses. And that is why it is said that the Shastras are free from all these imperfections, because it is given by Lord, and Lord is perfect in all these things. Lord is not imperfect like us. He is not conditioned like us. Now, we generally believe in so many sciences. We believe in sciences given by material scientists. But what happens in the statements given by material scientists is that one day they might come with a statement saying that with one statement, that Earth goes round, revolves around all. Another, after many years, we will accept that, and it will come in the form of in statements in the books also. After many years, we might say that another scientist will come and give a statement which is totally contradictory to what has been given and accepted by mankind. If you see any other this thing also, one day the whole society will say that milk is good for health, and after many years somebody else might say milk is not good for health. And these are uh, all things that we see uh, on a day-to-day basis. That's why conditioned life is not perfect. So to attain these perfections, one must try to understand the Shastra. Shastra is science. When we can believe in other sciences like uh, science, history, geography, and so forth, why can't we believe in spiritual science? In fact, it is the most important science, because matter acts only based on spirit. So spiritual science is very, very important for application in human form of life, whereas material science have no permanent value. Whereas Bhagavad Gita, if you all see, is eternal. It has existed in all the yugas, and the same Gita has been given in every yuga. So when we read the scripture, we know what is duty, what is not duty. And last but not the least, it is mankind has got two natures. One is divine, and the other one is demoniac. This is something that everybody has got. So by understanding the Vedic literatures, we try to know that yes, these are the demoniac qualities that we have, like lust, anger, and greed, and how they are big impediments in the path of our spiritual life. So we need to identify and correct these uh, symptoms from our demoniac nature. And on the other hand, we must try to understand our divine nature also, which everyone has. It varies from person to person. Continue to maintain and improve that also. So this is one point. Srila Prabhupada also mentions that there are different classes of followers. Like some may follow personalism and some may follow impersonalism. Personalism is one where people believe that God has got a name, He has got a form, etc. Whereas impersonalists also believe that God does not have a name, God does not have a form, etc. But irrespective of whether personalists or impersonalists, they all are meant to know what is given in the Shastras. And because they don't follow the Shastras, uh, impersonalists say that uh, they are God and they are, many say that we are to enjoy. If you see materialists normally come to a conclusion, whatever they have or whatever they see in this material world is all meant for them to enjoy. So these are all imperfections in the conditioned life. So when one becomes averse to the principles of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the scriptures, then there is a tendency of one to fall down. And that is the greatest offense in human life. So material energy is such that it is composed of three modes of material nature. One has to raise above these three modes and come to the platform of goodness. Now, those in the modes of passion and ignorance, they deride the scriptures, deride the holy personalities, and also deride the proper understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They disobey the instructions of the spiritual master, and they do not care for the regulation of scriptures. Whereas those who come to the mode of goodness, they try to understand the scriptures and apply. So many of them, in spite of hearing the glories of devotional service, they are not attracted to devotional service. They manufacture their own speculative way of elevation, which are not uh, uh, healthy. So these are all disturbances of society, and these are the defects of the human society, which is the cause for demoniac status of life. But if, however, one is able to be guided by a proper spiritual Brahman, bona fide spiritual master, who understands the scripture and explains, then one can be put into the path of elevation and become successful in life. Uh, these days, we see many people talk about Sanatan Dharma, etc. But even then, they don't know what is Sanatan Dharma, but some of them have their own speculative thoughts and give statements. But many who know the Shastras, they know what is the real Sanatan Dharma. So, particularly those who are born in this country, of course, it is applicable for all through the mankind, for mankind all over the world and universe. But then, being born in India, it's our duty to understand this and understand the value of life. So, with this, I conclude the class for the day. If anybody has got any questions or comments on these two verses today, they can ask me for the next couple of minutes. Does anyone have any questions, any comments?
Prabhuji, thank you very much for a detailed covering of the two verses. Very informative, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Thank you all very much. If there's nothing, then I take the class as closed. Thank you all very much. Bhagavad Gita, Satish Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.